Order, you are right about that.
Yes.
We got our mics fixed.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:02. The council and committee meeting for Wednesday, September 7th. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? None. Moved by Kathy Regier, seconded by Terry Miller. Be it resolved that the council and committee of the Township of Whitewater Region adopts the agenda for September 7th, 2016 meeting. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Man, I could get my own.
Trying to get treated here. I'm prepared.
All right. So, Dave, you're on first. Well, Public Works, I think that's self-explaining.
I'm going to start the Public Works with delegation Martin Logan. Okay, wait, Doug, do you want to say something?
So where's this camera? Okay. Should I claim a conflict with Mr. McKay off the top? Oh, McKay? So my cousin is Margaret, so I didn't know if that's a problem or anything like that. Good. All right. Okay. No problems. Thank you for having me here today. I was asked. I actually had multiple conversations with Mr. Schultz, and asked to come to council today. The reason I've asked to come to council is I'm looking for a closure of a road allowance that runs between 649 and 659 Rapid Road. What I've handed out is just kind of a brief overview of what I wanted to kind of just hit on in terms of topic areas, and then there's a couple of maps, and I'll just refer to the maps because it's a bit complicated, and this isn't my area of expertise in any way, shape, or form, so this has been quite a learning experience for me. A little bit of background about the road allowance that we're looking at. My understanding in doing a little bit of research about the road allowance that's running through these properties is that it was actually dates back to 1830s. Was the original continuation of what is now the Brumley Line. The Brumley Line is actually now a different road. So if you look on the second page there, what you'll see is actually a picture, and it has the Brumley Line, and the Brumley Line is actually running, as you can see, just south of the road allowance now. And the reason for the Brumley Line being moved, or my understanding for that, is there is actually swampland just to the riverside of Wright Road, and that was one of the major reasons for diverting it. And I believe the other reason is that the road allowance goes down right to the Otter River after the Rapid Road, and actually ends up in the middle of the Paquette Rapids, so it's not a navigable area of the Otter River. So the Brumley Line was put in, and the road was diverted. And the Brumley Line actually is quite a good road. It's not going through any kind of swampland, to my knowledge, or minimal swampland. And as I said, the allowance, the road allowance, as you can see just at the bottom there, I put in 649 and 659 Rapid Road. That's the allowance going through. So why am I worried about or concerned about this road allowance? Well, I'm currently in the midst of purchasing 659 Rapid Road. And as part of that, when I was originally looking at the GIS mapping, or GIC mapping, GIS mapping that was with the county, there's a cottage and actually a storage shed that was, actually the cottage was seen as being on the property, 659. So we put the paperwork through in terms of looking at how to sever the property, because we are severing it into 3 distinct parcels. And at that point in time, we were informed by the county that the cottage and another dwelling were on one of those lots, so we were asked to take down one of those dwellings. So we did, and then we got the survey. And the survey is actually on page 3. So we took down the farmhouse, we took down the garage, and then we found, as part of the survey, that actually you guys own the cottage and the shed. So it's actually on the road allowance. Now, both of these buildings were built probably in the early 1960s. My understanding in my conversation with David Boone is his thought that he did have a building permit. However, I'm not too sure about that. It was early 1960s. So this was a bit of a surprise. So that's kind of why we thought we should approach council to see if there was any possibility of closing that road allowance and actually amalgamating. So we haven't, this is a draft survey at this point in time. We were asked to hold off on finalizing the survey until approaching council to request the road closure so that it could be amalgamated to what's considered to be part 2 of that survey. So the other point that I'd like to make is that in conversation with the property owner at 649 Rapid Road, and I have had multiple conversations with Mr. Gary Boone, on the last page, Mr. Gary Boone was kind enough to actually sign an agreement for me to pursue the full road allowance if council decided that they would be willing to close the road allowance. So in terms of closure, the current road allowance was based on a proposed road that wasn't built in the 1830s. That actual road is the Brumley line, and it's probably in a much better place, being not in a swamp or ending up in the Paquette Rapids. And also, in my conversations with Mr. Schultz, I did say that I'm also open to discussing if there's any financial components of this, discussing that if the road allowance is closed. So that's it in a nutshell. This was a bit of a surprise to us, so.
Doug, is oh geez, that's loud, eh? The other Bromley line, is there a road allowance from the end of the new Bromley line?
Well, what happens is that
You'll need your mic.
What happens is when the Brumley line swings off by Wright Road, and if you look at the second map, it's like a part of it was a forest road because it swung off the right of way.
So the Brumley line is the purple line, and then the road allowance is that orange line.
So it does have its own road allowance, the new road?
Yeah.
Okay. So we wouldn't be losing a road allowance?
No, you can always maintain that because it's been probably there since 1800 or 1850.
Yeah. Councillor McLaughlin?
I go back to past practice and past council. We never, ever would close a road that led to a waterway. That we would move it, and we have done that in the past, because you said your property is, the building dwellings are on the property, on the road allowance, is that correct?
The 2 buildings, there are 2 buildings on the road allowance. As
Yeah,
right now.
and we have changed the road allowance to 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 the access of the water.
Right.
In a couple of occasions, we've done that, but we've never closed a road allowance that would go to a waterway. That's past, not saying that it can't happen.
No.
I'm just saying that that's past practice. And that was the reason why, because it was a leading to the waterway. Is there a possibility you could move somewhere, like the property, the road allowance to somewhere else on your property that would come to Rapid Road? Do you own to Rapid Road, is that?
Currently, our lot, as if we looked on page 3, so that's the extent of the lot. The whole lot, in terms of frontage on the river, it's all on the river. The difficulty being is that there's currently a trailer on that first parcel, so there's part 1, part 2, but the one above it is actually the original parcel of land, and we've severed the other 2 parts off of that. So there's a building on that property. Part 1 is where we're hoping to build a cottage, and then part 2, as you can see, is fairly thin, and then we get into the 66-foot worth of road allowance, and that's a very difficult component to put in. So I'm not sure. I do understand keeping the road to the river in terms of access points. My only concern is that it is in the Paquette Rapids. So I don't know in terms of launching boats, maybe getting water or something towards that end, I guess, would be a rationale.
I think at the time it was led to the waterway, and that was the reason why we wouldn't do that.
Okay.
My next question would be to Doug. If we decided we were going to close this, it would have to go out to the public, would it not?
No, it wouldn't have to go to the public, because you're closing it and it's road
But if we're going to sell it?
Probably not. I've seen it happen before where it doesn't go to the public because it's a road allowance that you're closing off.
Mayor Johnson? And then you.
Sure.
The practice in the past with the interested parties are usually the Ontario government.
Right.
And also federal influx. We now have a little difficult situation here with this heritage designation also, and there's a lot of things we would probably have to check out before we could go forward. The fact that that it goes to the rapids usually doesn't enter into it.
Right.
We have several that go to the rapids, and one of them is definitely supporting quite a tourist trade.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah.
This is something we can look at, but I don't think it's something we can make a snappy decision on.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's just my feeling on that. We've got to be kind of careful. I have personally no problem with you using the land, but it would have to. We may have to get a situation where you maintain an access. Whether it's ever used or not means nothing.
Right.
But Councillor McLaughlin is right that it has been an issue in the past to close a road allowance that accesses any water, regardless what size of lake or swamp or anything else, you know.
Would there, in terms of maintaining an existing access point, is there a set width in regards to what that would look like? This is 66 feet, I don't know.
That we would need a little bit of advice on. I don't think that's something I would want to answer.
Councillor Jackson?
Okay, first we'd have to probably look at our procurement bylaw to see what it does within surplus land, to see how road allowances are dealt with. But typically road allowances are firstly offered to the adjacent property owner. Right. And then in your case, if, other than the water issue, the other owner, adjacent owner, has granted you the authority to purchase the whole 66-foot road allowance. So that wouldn't be an issue. And then if nobody else wanted, if the adjacent landowners didn't want it, then it would go out to the public, but typically townships don't do that, just to close and surplus off a road allowance. In the past, in the former Ross Township, they have granted road closures and transfers to the adjacent property owners on Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Road, as an example, where you come down Bulger side road, is it not Bulger, but Acres, yes, all I can think of is Bully Acre, yeah. Acres Road, if you continue on there, that was transferred over years ago. So there is, and there is precedent saying that there is, but I agree with Mayor Johnson that now we have to look at the heritage component and make sure that we're not contravening anything with regards to that. Not that there's any regulations yet in place, but we would want to get a legal opinion. And typically, any of those costs are covered by, you've already had a survey done, so that's not an issue. But survey costs and registration of the deed would be your cost, typically. But we'd also have to check the procurement policy to see what that is and the heritage designation. But other than that, I don't see an issue with it. And as far as keeping an access point, there has been no access point. People are not aware and have not used that unopened road allowance to access the water in any way, shape, or form. So that's kind of nice. If it was used as a path to go down, you know, normally, then I would have a bit of a concern. But I don't have a concern with this one because it's not being used at all. It probably people don't even realize, as you didn't,
I didn't realize
that it is an unopened road allowance. So I would be okay with it, but we would just have to check those things out.
Yeah, I think the fact that we have another road that gives us access, and that road has never been open.
The road doesn't go all the way down.
I know, but
Bromley Line doesn't access all the way down to the water. It stops at Rapid Road. So they, you know, did a road to Rapid Road to avoid the swamp, but they didn't extend it down to the water. If you look at the map that he drew, that he has right there, the road actually doesn't access down all the way.
I know, but Doug said that there was a road allowance to the water, didn't you?
No, there's a road allowance.
Okay, sorry.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Mayor Johnson.
I think if you give us some time to get all these things sorted out, and we'll get back to you with an answer. I'm pretty sure that's all right, Chairman.
Yep, that's fine.
All right. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much for your time. Go ahead.
Can I ask one more question, if you don't mind?
Sure.
And what is a ballpark? Only because we are closing, Adam, the surveyor, we're holding it open just for that purpose, as you were mentioning. We were wanting to accept that cost of amending it into that existing survey. So would it be before Christmas? Roughly?
Could you put it as a part 3? Like, I don't know, or that is surveyed, so, but you want to do it as a lot addition.
Yeah.
So as long as it's surveyed that way, that it's got its separate identity.
Right.
So as long as your survey has that road allowance as a separate identity, then you should have no problem if it's granted to be a lot addition.
Okay.
If it's not identified as a separate legal identity, like a separate identity, then you'd have to survey it again to be able to transfer it.
Okay.
Okay?
No, I appreciate it. Oh. Thanks.
Mayor Johnson.
I direct this at Doug. What do you think would be a sensible timeline?
Well, we could forward this to the lawyer and see if there's any issues that he would bring up, and then, you know, there's going to have to be a lot addition probably to it, as Charlene says. So we would also, you know, do a little general inquiry with the county, and if nothing shows up, well, then it's okay. It's just a matter of whether council wants to do it then or not.
So we look at possibly middle of October?
I would say that would be probably
Okay.
in the timeframe.
That's probably quite
Okay,
satisfactory.
no, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much for coming in.
And say hi to Margaret.
I will. Roma Conference. I guess we have to find out who's going. Is that what we're doing here?
It's put on for discussion, correct?
Well, yeah, we provided to council, and can you please let Karen know if anybody's interested in attending, and we will register you. Now, just so you know, the OGRA is set for February 26th to March 1st, but no registrations are open yet until October 18th for that one.
Okay.
Roma is also looking for a new delegation, the Zone 6, which we're in. The councillor has withdrawn due to health issues, and so if anybody as well is interested in representing Zone 6, they should get a hold of one of the staff members so that they can put your name forward.
Okay, I think that's it for Public Works. Thank you.